Now I'd like to call up on stage our second keynote for the conference. She's flown all the way from Sydney. We all know about the company, Google. Michelle Allen, who's the head of travel for Google. Michelle is head of travel for Google Australia. She joined Google in 2011 and has 14 years experience in the travel industry in France, Spain, Australia, having previously worked for Amadeus. Michelle's passionate about understanding consumer behaviour and how the travel path to purchase has been impacted by digital transformation and in particular COVID. Please welcome on stage our keynote speaker for Maximox in 2022, Michelle Allen, please.
Thank you. I just need to click my microphone back onto my belt. So yes, my name is Michelle, and it's such a pleasure to be here. The last time I was in Auckland was pre-COVID, so 2.5 years ago, so it's such a pleasure to be back. So today I'm going to be sharing with you an insight into how consumer behaviour has changed over the last 2.5 years during COVID, what we've seen on our platforms, and also provide some recommendations about how to build a digitally led business to help you succeed in the future. And we have a lot of lessons to learn from the retail industry because as we went into lockdown and people were at home, they started shopping. So a lot of these insights are retail-led, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from them. So in 2020, everybody knows what happened. We went into lockdown in early 2020, and that meant that people stayed at home and they went online more. This is an Australian statistic, and in Australia, during COVID, there was a 150% increase of household usage on the internet. Makes sense. We were locked at home, we were shopping online, we were working online in a virtual world. And what's interesting here is that there was a huge spike in people all of a sudden being concerned about their internet speed as they went into lockdown, which we hadn't seen before. During COVID, 50% of Australians started becoming more comfortable interacting with brands online. People were getting more and more used to that purely digital experience. What we also saw was that 17% of people spent 17% more time online in 2020 than they did in 2019. So what we asked ourselves is this a shift in behaviour, or is it just a flash in the pan? Are people going to, post-COVID, go back to less of a digital world? And in fact, what we saw is it is a sustained change in behaviour. In 2020, 82% of households shopped online, spending significantly more money online than they had done previously. And the next statistic is one that I find really interesting. I heard some comments about it in a previous panel, but it's the question of loyalty. And loyalty is such a huge and important topic in the travel industry. What we saw during COVID was that 39% of Australians purchased at least one new brand that they'd never purchased before. So we can see that there's an intention or a willingness to experiment more with the brands. I don't have an answer to the question about loyalty, but it is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, and I will be watching the data and the statistics as it progresses. But reaching that consumer and getting their loyalty is becoming harder. So it's important as a brand, as a company selling travel accommodation, it's important that you be there and connect with your consumers where they expect you to. In Australia, 90% of Australians expect retailers, doesn't matter what size, both big and small, to sell their products online. There is an expectation that brands have that online presence. And it's not just online that consumers expect to interact with brands. 91% of consumers in Australia interacted with brands in two or more different channels, and that could be in-store, could be via email, website, app. Consumers are expecting to experience your brands in multiple locations, so it's not enough just to have a one sales channel strategy anymore. What we also want to look at or want to understand is how are consumers using Google to buy and to research. And what we can see is in the under 55 age bracket, half of Australians are using Google to search to research, to get initial ideas of the products that they want to buy. And if you don't have a physical retail store, or even if you do have a physical retail store, what's interesting is how consumers are shopping. Half of Australian retail searches happen outside that 9 to 5. So as a hotelier or a travel seller, have to understand when consumers are searching, and it's not in that traditional 9 to 5 period, which is where digital really comes into its own, because digital can be always on. Unless you've got a physical presence that's open 24/7, that's where digital can really help. And remember that consumers do want to interact with brands in more than one channel. This is going on to that topic that I'm fascinated by, and that's loyalty. And it's about being present when consumers want to interact with your brand, or if they're in that research phase. 1 in 3 consumers will choose a brand just because it's there. And 60% of consumers will choose a brand they've never heard of before when the messaging is relevant and right for them. So again, this makes me think about what is happening in loyalty. I think loyalty is hugely important, but are consumers in that more experimental mindset where they are willing to try different brands so long as it seems like it's a right fit for them? So what do we know? What have we learned from retail? Is that number one, people are always shopping. It's not just traditional 9 to 5. And the purchase journeys are getting extremely complex. Consumers want to interact with you in different channels at different times. They expect relevant messaging. And that path to purchase is no longer linear. We used to talk in the travel industry about dream, plan, book, experience, share. It's not like that anymore. It's becoming increasingly more complex. So the question as travel brands and travel sellers is, how do you win that consumer to try and bring them down that purchase funnel? Consumer expectations are rising. During COVID, consumers got more comfortable online, shopping online, researching online. And that expectation has risen across all industries, not just retail. So the consumer expectations are increasing across all industries. So let's take a look at 2022. Borders have reopened. I'm optimistic. We're traveling again. I'm back here. But we are facing challenging times. There is definitely, globally, concern about increasing inflation. The data that I'm looking at here is from the 1st of July 2020 in Australia and New Zealand, and this is searches that are happening on Google around inflation. So you can see that over time, especially since January this year, there are more and more searches about inflation. So we know that consumers are concerned about what is happening in their economy. This statistic is from the OECD website, and consumer confidence is at an all-time low. Consumers, people are nervous about rising expenses, inflation, debt, all of those things. And more than half, this is a study that we ran in 15 countries globally, more than half of consumers say that they are holding off buying some items because they're too expensive right now. So consumers are making choices to cut back in terms of their disposable income. So the question I ask myself, being in the travel industry, is, are these factors impacting consumer intent and willingness to purchase when it comes to travel and hospitality? I'm cautiously optimistic. We've been deprived of travel for so long. There's a phrase that I love, and it's vacation deprivation. People feel like they need a reward after being locked down and not able to travel for so long. Again, this is from that global study we ran in 15 markets, and despite rising prices, there has been an uptick, a positive uptick in people shopping for travel. I also wanted to look at our search data, because search is a really good proxy for consumer demand, because we know at any point in the purchase cycle for travel, about 95% of consumers will come to Google at some point to research, find information, help them make that purchase decision. So what I looked at here was globally, so all countries, the volume of people searching for travel. The red line is last year and the blue line is this year. So we can see across the whole year, it's positive. There are much more searches this year than last year for travel. I thought it would also be interesting to look at New Zealand. So globally, people around the world, who is interested in searching for travel to come to New Zealand? Again, the red line is last year and the blue line is this year. So we can see it's a really positive view of consumer intent, of people considering and wanting to travel. And the market predictions for travel and tourism are positive. This is from Statistica, and this is New Zealand-specific data. And this is predicting the total value of the travel and tourism industry from 2020, obviously historical data, but predicting it up to 2026. Obviously, the dip in the middle is COVID, or in the first third is COVID. But again, this is positive. It's in growth. So how do consumers feel prices are changing? This is from Deloitte. It's Australian data. They don't publish this for New Zealand. But the question was asked, how do you feel prices are changing? What is a higher price now than it was last month? And interesting that grocery and restaurants came out as number 1 and 2. So people are concerned and are feeling really the pinch around those items. Travel is what I would consider, it's a privilege to be able to travel, but it's also often not considered an essential item. It's often in that fun recreation bucket when it's not related to business travel. I thought it would be, this is a good graph to show demographically who is looking to spend a higher proportion of their available income on that fun bucket. And that light blue, if you look at number 9 on the clock or on the wheel, that light blue skews higher towards recreation, entertainment, leisure, and travel. So that's the younger demographic of 18 to 34. And the 55 plus are planning to spend less of their disposable or household share of wallet on that category. So we can see that there is a really clear tension between the economic concerns, but the desire to travel and post-pandemic optimism. I am such a believer in vacation deprivation and that people do want to travel and that they will continue to do so. So the question is, how do you future-proof your business? It's a complex environment. People are concerned about macro factors. The purchase journeys are becoming more complex and consumers have ever-increasing expectations of travel brands. So I'm going to share some recommendations of, as travel businesses, I think that you should be focusing on. The first one is looking internally, and I heard some comments about this on a previous panel, and it's really about building the right organization, so starting from inside out. The first thing is to make sure all of the leaders in your organization, or anyone who is responsible for executing or creating or delivering a part of the strategy, make sure that they are all aligned behind a common strategy and roadmap. And that might sound obvious, but I speak to many, many companies, and as I speak to different people in the organization, I realize they have quite different objectives and quite different ways to measure success and what they're trying to achieve. My recommendation is to really make sure that everybody is aligned against a North Star of what you're trying to achieve, to make sure that you're all pulling in the right direction. The second thing, lead with data. Data is an enormous topic. I could probably stand up here and talk to you about for half the day about data. It's an evolving space, especially when it comes to the ads landscape and privacy around ads and how you're collecting data. Our recommendation is your first-party data is king. First-party data means the information that you have in a privacy-safe way, with permission, collected from your consumers. So from your CRM system, for example. It is by having this data and collecting it in the right way that you will be able to get a lot more from digital. So in this, I'm definitely talking about any investments, people, financial, architecturally. This is really key, is think about your data strategy, how you're collecting data and what you're using it for. Again, I heard this in the last panel, but the importance of staying agile. I think what we've all learned over the last 2.5 years is that the world changes really quickly. Add technology into the mix, technology evolves incredibly fast. So thinking about how you create an agile organization that can pivot when needed, when external factors change, when new technology comes out, it will allow you to be a lot more nimble. This one also came up. This is a big topic. Recruitment. Ensure that you hire the right talent. And that's not only to deliver your service, it's also about your approach to digital and technology. Have you got the right people that are going to be able to lead your organization or provide the skill set to help you think digitally? And I know that this is hard. Recruitment in the travel and tourism industry is a challenge in many markets. But it's definitely something that I, at Google, spend a lot of time investing myself, is building the right team and making sure I've got the right talent. All right, the next bit is the importance of talking to your customers about what they care about. A lot of this comes down to, we'll come back to digital, but consumers do want to hear personalized messages. So long as you've collected their data with consent in a privacy-safe way, customers do want to hear about products and services that answer their needs and that are relevant to them. In New Zealand, this is a study we run across about 15 APAC markets. It's a sentiment survey, and we ask consumers what do they care about when it comes to thinking about booking travel. In New Zealand, it's flexibility. Consumers are still nervous about what flexibility they will have to change their travel bookings. Consumers care about price, and they also care about certified hygiene. These factors are not unique to New Zealand. These three factors come out in top 3 across most of the APAC markets that we survey. So when you're thinking about your marketing communications to customers, these are 3 of the top things that they care about, so make sure that you're putting that information front and center for them. I mentioned it before, but the decision-making process is really complex. Consumers are taking information from so many different sources, both online and offline, and we call this the messy middle. Consumers are always going through that exploration and evaluation phase before they finally decide which purchase they want to make. So we ran a behavioral science study about 18 months ago to try and unpick what were the factors that really helped the consumer go from that exploration and evaluation phase down into purchase. And we came up with 3 characteristics of what can help move that consumer to buy. The first one is category heuristics. That means they want a short bit of information about what the product or service they're buying is. The second one, power of now. Consumers want instant gratification. So whether or not they're ordering a pair of shoes online, or if they want to book a hotel, they want to be able to do it quickly. If you're ordering a physical good, they want that to be delivered quickly. They don't want to have to wait. Social proof is about the importance of recommendations. So that could be reviews on Google Reviews, it could be reviews or likes on Facebook. Consumers care about that social proof and thinking or knowing that there are many other supporters of this brand. Scarcity bias. Travel industry loves a bit of scarcity bias. That means when you go to book, let's say, a hotel, because the hotel industry does this really well, they'll say, a flash up will come saying, only 2 left at this price. Actually, airlines are getting pretty good at it now too. That scarcity and making the consumer understand that this product is not in total abundance can often help make them make that purchase decision quicker. Authority bias. Consumers like to see that a brand has been accredited by a third-party organization. It gives more credibility. So if you do have accreditation from independent agencies, this is definitely something that will build consumer trust in your brand. And also the power of free. Everybody loves something free. So for example, if you can add something in for free into an offering without increasing the price, this can also excite consumers and push them into that purchase. So I've got some examples here about navigating this messy middle using some of those categories that I showed you before. So the first one, free, the power of free. Free unlimited date changes. And they've also got their reviews up there. So that one's the social proof. This one, book now, that's starting on the scarcity bias, and also more baggage allowance, that's going into free. This one is a view from the Google Hotels interface, and also again, we know that consumers are caring about that flexibility, so that free cancellation is something that we put up there front and center because we know that really consumers are concerned about that. This one is very much about Marcoms, how I'm going to talk about it, but in general, if you can automate a process where human interaction is not adding value, we are the travel and tourism industry, there is a lot of personal interaction that adds a lot of value. But in all businesses, there are things that we do manually that we can automate, which will be more efficient from a resource perspective and allow your people to focus on more strategic things. In this particular case, I'm going to be talking about marketing communications. Wherever possible in this data, this privacy-safe world that we're going into, you've probably heard of cookie deprecation. This is where it's really key to automate as much as possible. So you get your first-party data, you tell the system what your business objective is, whether it be ROI, whether it be market share, and what you want to achieve from your marketing campaigns, and you let the system go and do it for you. And you do it because now with the amount of data, the complexity of the purchase journey, it is impossible to do that effectively manually. Of course, it needs manual input, it needs manual oversight, but the key is to automate where a machine can do a better job than a human. So the machine is able to, once you've got your data, once you've put in your objectives, the machine is able to find your consumers where they are. The machine can serve relevant content using those heuristics to help the consumer move down the purchase funnel. And the machine optimizes automatically towards business results. So people often say to me that they feel like automation is taking away the value from the human input. And I say back, there is a lot that a machine can do better than a human. Humans still need to guide the machine, and where there's an interaction that's not adding value to your brand or to your customers that's done by a human, think about how you can automate that. I heard this in the panel before. There's lots of themes that are running through. But this approach to test and learn, and it goes about building an agile organization. When it comes to marketing communications and digital marketing, it is not a set and forget. It is about constantly testing and learning, running a campaign, seeing how it worked, which bits worked better than others, and just keeping that constant test and learn approach. And with technology evolving so quickly, this is key to keep up with the trends. I am going to share some tools with you now. Some of these are Google tools. Some of these are free, some of these are not free, but I'll call them out as I go through. But there are some great tools that Google has to help you understand consumer behavior and also upskill as well. So a lot of the graphs that I showed you today, a lot of them came from this tool, and it's called Travel Insights with Google. All you need to do is search in Google for travel trends, and it will come up. And it allows you to search by country, origin, destination, consumer search query, interest in specific destinations, hotels, flights. It's a great way to keep your finger on what are consumers searching for, which destinations, which cities. It allows you to keep a pulse on those trends. The next one, if you don't have a Google business listing, it's free. The last tool was free as well. Google Travel Trends was free. This one is free. A Google business listing, especially if you have a physical property or even if you have a service, this allows you to share information on the first page of the search results that gives information about your business, things like opening hours, things like COVID policies, and it's just a great way to showcase your product. Remember that slide? You need to be there to be in the consumer's consideration set. The next one, if you're a hotel, we have something called free booking links, and this is an integration with our Google Hotels environment. And there is a way to appear totally free. We don't charge for it. There is a way to integrate directly, but also through an integration partner if it's too technically difficult for you. If this is something that is of interest, I would recommend searching it on Google, and you'll be able to find lots of information about how to do that. There is also a paid option. It's called Google Hotel Ads. It works very similar to search engine marketing. It's just in a specific environment, which is the Google Hotels environment. And the last one, analytics. I mentioned a couple of times the importance of data and how to operate in the future ecosystem of this data privacy safe world. I cannot recommend enough, if you don't have an analytics solution on your website, there's lots of free options. Ours is called GA4. Get that tagging into your website because it gives you a really rich insight into consumers when they're coming to your website, how they got to your website, what they're doing when they get to your website, what products they're looking at. And it starts to help build that picture of your consumers and also that data that you can start leveraging for your messaging. The last one is a website, totally free. It's called Think with Google. This is where we publish all of our case studies, our thought leadership articles. There's videos, there's trainings. So if you ever hear something, especially from a digital context that you're not sure about, like what does privacy safe future mean? What does cookieless world mean? What does automation and marketing mean? This is a great resource that you can go through, and lots of the articles are very bite-sized and they're quick to read. So I definitely recommend if you feel like you need to upskill or you feel like your teams need to upskill in the world of digital, this is a great resource. So in summary, it's a complex world. Consumers are complex. None of us can predict the future. But I am optimistic about the future of travel and tourism. It's a fantastic industry. People love to do it. It's inspirational. It's aspirational. So as a company operating in this digital first world, these would be my recommendations. Number one, understand your consumer behavior. And that's using third-party sources like that Google Travel Trends I showed you, but it's also using your own data, understanding what's happening on your website and collecting rich first-party data which you've collected in a privacy-safe way that will help you really understand your consumers. Make it easy to transact online. Think about your digital properties. Think about the consumer flows. Remember, consumers are expecting to interact with you in more than one channel. So don't just think about your website. Think about all of your presences and make it easy to transact online. And the last one, people, capability. Both you and your team my recommendation is really boost your digital capabilities because it is a fast-moving space and it will continue to evolve. And even though it takes an investment in time, both for you and your team, it is important that to operate successfully from a digital perspective, you need to stay across the trends and the developments. Thank you.